Vaughan City Centre in the northwest to Union Station in the south. Etobicoke in the west to Scarborough in the east. The Toronto Transit Commission carries more than 500 million riders across a vast urban area every year. Who is best positioned to run and oversee that system? The Ontario government says it is. The province's capital city says it is. Let's get into that with Frank Scarpitti. He is the mayor of Markham and the chair of the York Region Rapid Transit Corporation. Josh Matlow, Toronto City Councillor for Ward 12, St. Paul's. Jan De Silva, President, CEO of the Toronto Region Board of Trade. Cherise Berta, Executive Director, Ryerson City Building Institute. And Ben Spur, transportation reporter at the Toronto Star. And it's great to have everybody around our table here. I think, Mr. Mayor, this is the first time for you.
Great to be here with you, Stephen.
Happy to have you here. Let us just get everybody sort of up to speed with the background. And by everybody, I don't mean you, I mean them. Because, Ben, I want you to come in here and tell us there has been a bit of an understanding or an accord agreed to by the province and its capital city regarding this. What's been agreed to?
Basically, they've agreed to enter into talks about what the province's proposal to what they call upload the subway system to the provincial government. So right now, the city owns the TTC subway network. What the province has proposed is that the province would take ownership of the subway system, and they've always framed it in a particular way, and they've said that the TTC would actually still maintain the day-to-day operations of the subway system. So there's no final agreement on this yet, but basically the two sides have agreed to enter into formal discussions. And what's interesting actually is that as part of those discussions, they will discuss a couple of other options rather than just what the province has proposed. They also will discuss an alternative option where the province would only take ownership of new projects, not the existing subway system, and also a sort of vague, what they call a realignment of responsibilities where perhaps no assets would change hands, but the province would be responsible for delivering new transit projects. So there's a bunch of options on the table, but the province has stated their preference to take ownership.
Well, let's go back to the middle of last year, because this is how then candidate Doug Ford rolled it out before he became Premier Doug Ford. Sheldon, the clip, if you please.
When we take over something as large as transit, I think it's nothing but a benefit to the city of Toronto. We're taking this off their shoulders, and the reason we're doing it, as I've said all along, for 12 years, we just can't seem to get transit built in the city of Toronto. I said it before, David Miller couldn't do it, my own brother couldn't do it. He could save money, but he couldn't build transit. And John, he hasn't had an opportunity, or I should say Mayor Tory, hasn't had an opportunity to even put a shovel in the ground. And I'm not blaming him, by the way. It's a dysfunctional system down there, dysfunctional council. But hopefully it'll run a little smoother with 25 councillors, and we'll be able to get things done.
Okay, as often happens on this program, the host misspoke. He was Premier when he said that. He wasn't running for office at that point. Josh Matlow, let me get you in here to save me from any further mistakes. That's the Premier's position. What's your position?
I actually am not convinced that the Premier's position is that taking Toronto subway has anything to do with improving transit. And I'm basing that based on his track record, but also his stated goals. What this is about is taking Toronto subway, its lands and its air rights to be able to sell off. He's done that with the Hearn. It looks like he wants to do that with Ontario Place.
Power generating station by the
That's right. And now it looks like he wants to do that with the subway's lands and air rights, because that's what he and his Minister of Transportation has said they intend to do. Now, if they want to build transit, if they want to build new subways, nothing stops them from doing that today. In fact, the Eglinton Crosstown, which is a partially underground, partially surface LRT route,
20 meters from the studio,
is a provincially owned Metrolinx project that they have an agreement with the TTC to operate, but they own it, they're building it, and they are getting it done. If they want to build subways to whether it be Pickering or Thunder Bay or anywhere else that they might want to build subways, which I disagree based on any planning evidence is a good way to go, but if they want to do that, nothing stops them from doing that. And in fact, if they want to really improve transit, they should be focusing on evidence-based plans like the 4 LRT routes that he and his brother canceled when he was on city council. They should be focusing on improving transit to areas like Markham, using the existing GO RER routes, electrifying them and making sure that the service is excellent, rather than spending billions and billions and billions of dollars that are needed to go into priorities, into multi-billion-dollar lengthy tunnels that are the most expensive part of building transit, and no great city in the world would build subways out to suburban areas.
I don't know if there's a subway to Thunder Bay in the mix, but there might be to Markham. You have talked about the possibility of a subway going up to Markham or extending the Yonge Street line up there. If the province were to upload responsibility for the subway system to itself, away from the city, how would that affect those plans?
So I would just say that I do support the upload of the construction of the subway system. I think it's long overdue, and you know, maybe the Premier misspoke when he talked about Pickering. I think it's kind of, I hope you're saying it in tongue-in-cheek when we're talking about a subway up to Thunder Bay. What is needed is a world-class rapid transit system throughout the whole of the GTA. And unfortunately, I think time has proven that leaving that decision-making in the control of one municipality when we need those lines to cross political boundaries hasn't worked. And the time has come, and I've said I support upload with conditions. We got to stop the jurisdictional issues that always get in the way of advancing these projects. We have to start building. We have to stop talking, because the evidence is there that these lines are needed. And then the other thing that I think is critically important, and hopefully Josh and I would agree, that there has to be less of a financial burden on the property taxpayer to pay for these large infrastructure projects. You can't do it on the back of the property taxpayers.
On that, I'm sure you both agree.
It needs the other levels of government.
Let me get Therese Burda in here to talk about whether or not that vision for how you build more subways in the GTA makes sense to you.
Well, first of all, I agree we need regional transit, but it can't come at expense of the local. Most of our rides are local. For example, Toronto has double the amount of ridership than the GO network and every other municipality in the GTA combined, so twice that much. And we need to look at improving that ridership experience, which will then help the region. If you don't support Toronto and make it better, for example, the Relief Line, then we can't get that subway up to Markham, which I agree with you. I grew up in Markham. There was no one who wanted that subway more than me when I was going to university. But I understand that in order to serve that, you need to, first of all, bolster the Toronto experience. And the other thing I want to say is that I feel like these clips that we see sends the signal that there's a problem with Toronto's transit. And Toronto has one of the best, most highly efficient transit systems in the world, in North America. It is recognized year after year of being one of the most efficient systems, and it's efficient because it's well integrated.
Though, when people watch one car, two car, three cars, four full cars go by during rush hour that they can't get on.
Precisely.
They don't feel that way.
But that's not because of the system. That's because it's underfunded. So to rip apart the system and de-integrate it and say, we're going to take out the main artery, which is the subways, and leave the buses and the streetcars to fend for themselves, that's not going to improve the ridership experience. If you want to help Toronto, don't dismantle the system, fund it.
Jen, the Toronto Region Board of Trade, was calling for a bigger transit agency than Metrolinx once upon a time. I think you guys might have been first off the bat, actually, to do this. Not Metrolinx, but Superlinx. How would that affect what we're talking about?
Let me just talk about it from the perspective of our members. We think uploading is an opportunity, and it needs to be pursued as an opportunity. Our members are deeply concerned about the inability of employers and their workers to get connected to their jobs. I mean, Neptus Foundation had a report late last year that showed in the last 10 years of the 75,000 jobs that were created in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, 67,000, hyper-concentration downtown Toronto. Our transit connectivity and our housing hasn't kept pace with that growth. We see the financial statements of the city, the math just doesn't work. It simply doesn't add up. The city does not have the fiscal or capital capacity for $23 billion of unfunded state of good repair to TTC that exists today, let alone funding expansion of that and getting on with critically needed projects like social housing. So from our perspective, for all these reasons, we think the province and an upload offers the opportunity to solve that math. And we're also very confident that City Council and the Mayor can pursue the best deal possible for the city because they're open to negotiation.
If that kind of math is a problem, why don't you see it?
I think we're all in agreement that the city and the TTC is underfunded when it comes to expanding and improving transit, and that we need other orders of government to adequately invest in Toronto's priorities along with the region. We are also in agreement that we need a more cohesive regional system with integrated fares and making sure that the experience of the rider, whether they are coming from Markham or downtown Toronto or anywhere in between, is seamless. What I disagree with, though, is the false premise by Premier Ford that the upload is the answer to achieving those goals. In fact, those goals are already being worked on. We already have a subway that goes up to Vaughan. There are agreements in place. We have master agreements with the province to make sure that when we are building, such as the Eglinton Crosstown, and hopefully other lines that have been promised, that there are agreements between the TTC and the province as far as investing in the capital and who's going to operate and maintain it in the future.
Easier to do, though, if just the province is calling the shots as opposed to all of the different municipalities.
But the concerns, as Cherise brought up, are not being addressed. The subway is the spine of the system. It is directly and it is connected intrinsically with the feeder lines, the streetcars and the buses. So to simply just chop it up into pieces, because the subway line has the most value as far as the lands and the air rights, is not responsible.
But can't you be negotiating for a win for the city with those air rights? Take a percentage of those proceeds and have them allocated social housing, $2 billion we need to find.
Minister Yurek brought up the social housing piece the other day in one of his arguments. They've got messaging on this. The reality is the province owns dozens of pieces of land in Toronto, and if they were serious about actually building affordable housing, they could do that on lands that are far less complex than building over subway lines. What I do agree with is that the TTC...
But Councillor, I'm talking about the stock that the city's already responsible for, where we're hearing horrific conditions for people living in those units. And those are our stock, and we've got to fix it.
But that's why Mayor Tory, and to his credit, has already announced that there are 11 city sites, parking lots, works yards, et cetera, that are going to be dedicated to affordable housing. The province, the federal government, and the city should be dedicating lands to affordable housing. What I have not seen is any evidence by Minister Yurek or Premier Ford that this is about affordable housing. I haven't seen any evidence that this is about transit. What I do see is the first thing that they're asking the city for as part of the negotiations that are happening behind closed doors is to know the value of the assets, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get the...
Can I ask about that?
Value
Let me just ask Ben about that. Why is the province only interested in uploading the subways and not the buses or streetcars, which are also part of the same system, after all?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to focus in on what the province is actually proposing here, because they're not actually proposing to take over the operations of anything. They're not proposing to take over the operations of the subway either. So the idea that the province can kind of run transit better, they're not talking about running transit. They're talking about owning physical infrastructure of the subway only. And I think their stated reasons for that is that the province is best positioned to build new subway projects, to build new transit lines, because they have a greater financial flexibility, they say, and the city has limited ability and according to the province, a poor track record of getting things built. So that's why they're focusing on only the subway infrastructure. But the idea that that somehow, I think, the daily rider's experience is going to drastically change if the subway changes ownership to the province. I don't really see how that's the case.
Well, come on, Stephen. This is look at the system now has not worked, and that's no one organization's fault. It has been primarily because the senior levels of government of all party stripes have not funded transit at the level that it should have been funded. But, we finished our environmental assessment on the Yonge subway 9 years ago. That was done. We've been sitting, waiting for the approval of funding, waiting for TTC to advance that project. And again, appreciate that they also have other priorities. And that's why I say I don't think one city can be involved in delivering a rapid transit system that has to serve all of the GTA.
But you know what they said to you, though?
Hang on. Over a year ago, we got funding from the provincial and federal governments to start the preliminary design. We've been waiting for the TTC, and again, I appreciate they have a lot of priorities. We've been waiting for the TTC to get that design work started. It's been over a year just to get the office set up. And when it comes time this past Christmas to actually do the boreholes on Yonge Street. We started on the north side of Steeles Avenue. We did those boreholes, and unfortunately, not Josh, but another local councillor, because they have the right to stop those permits in the City of Toronto, stopped the work, the boreholes, the information,
Your
the
Worship.
geotechnical work that's needed to advance the preliminary design. These are the jurisdictional issues that we talk about. No one is saying take over TTC.
You come back on this, and then I want to talk about some math, and then I want to get you.
May I advise you, though? There is nothing stopping the province from just announcing that they're going to be building subways north. They can do that if they choose to. It's like saying we've got to, like everybody
That's what
agrees.
they are saying. They do want to take
Everybody
over the
agrees that the
construction.
status quo isn't working, but just by saying I've got a headache and then announcing that you're going to cut off the leg doesn't
They're
actually
not
solve the
cutting
problem.
off the leg. What they're
cutting
proposing
off
and
the-
actually is to improve the body.
So why
they're
don't you
actually
ask-
proposing to advance these projects
Yes.
that have been stalled
But they can do
time
that.
after time.
But Toronto Council, that's not the reason that project has been stalled. We have not had a provincial government that has dedicated funding and a commitment to extending that line. They could do that today if they chose to.
Josh, they
don't
gave
need
us
to
the
own
money to
existing
do the
system.
I
preliminary
think that's
design.
part of the
Let's get
problem
Teresa.
is we wouldn't be in this situation if we had implemented revenue tools that are dedicated and long-term. We have been talking about raising revenue tools for transit. That's how every city successfully builds out its system.
So
is through
congestion
dedicated,
charges, tolls on the highways,
sales taxes,
right.
gas taxes. Cities all across North America do this, and they're successful. Well, every single successive government at the province, even at the city, has failed to do that. Nobody wants to pay taxes. So
If
it's
Kathleen Wynne
cut
wouldn't
taxes.
do it, Doug Ford's not going to do it.
I don't think so, but this is why we're at this situation where we are now. We failed to do that. You get what you pay for and you get what you don't pay for. And so now we're looking at what can we do? Can we debt finance? Well, that's going to put us into further deficit. Not a great idea. Here's a good idea. Let's take that really valuable land assets, air rights, that Toronto has around its subways. Let's get a hold of that and reinvest that
what's
in
wrong
our
with that?
favorite,
But what's wrong with that?
in our favorite transit projects. Well, what's wrong with that is it's like selling the furniture to pay the mortgage.
it's
That's
sorry,
a one-time
I've got
cash
business. I've got
influx.
employers who are
It's
just
a one-time cash influx. What do you do after that? And that land belongs to Toronto, and Toronto's Housing Now plan for affordable housing is dependent on leveraging that land. It's not going to solve all of our problems.
If we could pretend that the relief line didn't have to be built, if social housing
That's what I
didn't
wanna
have
talk
to be
about.
built, then that's fine. But unfortunately, I would like to see the TTC more effectively use those lands to improve our priorities. You have GO RAR lines that should be better used right now, and then once we get the relief line up and running, then there can be discussions about those kinds
Let me
of
jump in
issues.
with some math here, because I know we all care about math at this table. Sheldon, you want to put this graphic up, and we'll bring some background to this discussion here. Here are some numbers. This is from the TTC's 2018 operating budget. We're talking about the largest city transit service in Canada. It's the third largest in North America. They operate at the Toronto Transit Commission 800 subway cars, 260 streetcars and LRVs, light rail vehicles, 1,900 buses, transporting 539 million riders every year, and a staff of 5,700 operators. If you're outside of Toronto and you've never taken the system, the Yonge University Spadina subway line, which is kind of, how would you say it? It's not really a horseshoe. It's down and sort of up and to the left. It's north-south. It's the busiest TTC route. They do 780,000 riders every day. Then the Bloor-Danforth subway line, which goes east-west, that's another 500,000 plus riders a day. The budgeted ridership for 2018, 539 million rides. That's a 3.4 million increase over the 2017 projection. However, a decrease of 4.4 million rides from the 2017 budget of 543.8 million. These are big numbers. But the bottom line is, here's where we need to get to the bottom line. How would uploading subway responsibilities, not for operations, but for new construction, et cetera, affect the riders everyday experience. Those 500 million plus people, how would it change their lives?
It's more than the 500 million plus people. I mean, it's great. In Yonge and St. Clair, we've got the benefit of the subway. We've got workers living in Scarborough and other parts of the city getting to our major employment zones. Not all our employment zones are downtown. There's a mega zone that's Markham, Richmond Hill, and Toronto, where you've got knowledge workers there. The second largest employment zone in Canada is around the airport. Huge logistics, distribution, freight forwarding, 300,000 people from our city and other cities that have no choice but to drive every day.
But if you tried to get on the subway at Yonge and
this would
St. Clair?
be improved dramatically if we had uploading the assets, so that the province needs that to make the math work, to get the debt financing in place.
So it's an accounting play, really.
So they can expand the network overall and get people connected to where the jobs are. Neptus Foundation has done tremendous evidence-based research to say, where are the employment zones? How do we get people from their homes to those zones? And we need to get better transit built.
Our chief planner will also tell you, though, that the relief line needs to be up and running.
I could not agree with you more,
because
so negotiate that.
If you're at Yonge and St. Clair or here Yonge and Eglinton, you can't get on
But I understand that concern.
The Neptus report said that downtown is having the highest growth, so we need that relief.
No,
line to
absolutely,
serve that.
and you're in a negotiation.
I got to
Ask
ask
the
the mayor
province
this.
for it.
I got to ask His Worship this. You are a champion, obviously, of building the subway north to Markham, which satisfies your constituents' needs. However, again, to Josh Madlow's point, what is the value in trying to build the subway, the Yonge line, which already does 780,000 riders a day? What's the value of trying to get more people on that line from north of the city right now when they can't? I mean, that line's bursting at the seams.
Yeah, we know what the current situation is, Stephen. This is why I think the province is trying to get the upload and trying to get more of the network built. No one has ever disputed that these lines are busy, that the platforms are crowded. And by the way, there's steps the TTC should have taken a long time ago to improve the way that those passengers are being dealt with there every morning. Just technology, gates that can be used to better their experience. You don't have to wait for more subway trains to do that. So they should have been doing that if they really were concerned about the customer. I will say this, we have always said that the downtown relief line and the Yonge subway extension north to Highway 7, which is, by the way, Markham, Richmond Hill, and Vaughan, servicing over 2,500 daily bus trips that are jammed with commuters each and every day. We've never said don't build the downtown relief line. We've never said that the downtown relief line shouldn't open prior to the Yonge subway. It can open up 12 hours before, 12 days before, or 12 months before. I don't really care. But both these projects should be funded. Both these projects need to happen to improve the network that is out there servicing all of the GTA.
Ben, what's your view on that?
Well, yeah, I would just to the point of whether or not the upload would lead to improved service for the average transit rider. I don't see a way that it would dramatically improve it, but there is a way where it could make it worse, right? And the opponents of the upload are concerned that we have this pattern in Toronto of we keep on building the subway network out further without building any new lines downtown. So we're just extending our existing lines, adding more people onto that. And over the past couple of decades, I mean, the downtown Toronto has boomed, and it's been decades since we built a new subway station there. So the concern is that the provincial government will choose the wrong projects to build first, and so there's a real anxiety among opponents of the upload. That the relief line that's like a red line for a lot of people in Toronto. That the relief line must open up first, and there's this idea that and the mayor has the Mayor Scarpitti has said that both projects can go forward at the same time, but those are really expensive projects, and the provincial government also wants to build the Scarborough subway extension. That's a really expensive project too. So can you pursue 3 different subway lines all at the same time, especially if the provincial government has said that they don't want to add to the debt, they don't want to raise new taxes?
Can I Charisse that?
How do you build?
Can you do 3 subway lines all at once?
I think you could if you're going to fund it, but I think that's what it comes down to, is where are you going to get the money from? Is there enough money from monetizing Toronto's real estate assets? If there is, what happens after that? How do you fund the next thing and the next thing after that? Because that's certainly not going to solve our ridership problem. And in particular, in our ridership experience in Toronto, it's the least subsidized transit agency in North America. So if you want to help the rider experience, fund improvement, the service, the reason that they're waiting for 3 buses and they're jammed. That's not a problem with the system, it's a problem with the funding, and there's 0 operating dollars from the province
let's be realistic
going
here.
to
Let's be,
the TTC
let's
right
be realistic here that there's a problem on all the existing systems out there because we haven't built enough transit. There's been nothing short of 7 different studies, Stephen, since 2008 when Metrolinx made it clear that the downtown relief line and the Yonge subway extension north could happen. There's been 7 different studies since then. The 2015 report that went to the Metrolinx board, endorsed by the board, peer-reviewed twice, clearly demonstrated that with the new train technology, the new signals, with the Spadina extension all the way up to Highway 7, with RER, all of that would create capacity within the Yonge subway line until 2031. By 2031, we would complete the downtown relief line and the Yonge subway extension all the way north. There is a problem on the system because there hasn't been enough investment. But if you close your eyes, I would agree that if not another dime was spent on the capital expansion of a rapid transit system throughout the GTA, oh my God, what a system we have in hand. The fact is, the previous provincial government, it seems like this provincial government is determined to spend as much money. In fact, during their platform, Premier Ford said he would spend $5 billion on top of what had already been committed
How
to.
about your constituents? Would they be prepared to pay higher property taxes to make a larger municipal contribution to making this happen?
So they would be prepared to pay more, but again, you cannot fund, and neither can the City of Toronto. And that's why the senior levels of government come with the big checks in hand, because they can't fund the expansion of the subway system
But
from property taxpayers.
Steve,
so they can't do it. How would you ever expect us to do it? We need the other senior levels of government to be
we
at
are in agreement that we need other orders of government to help fund these the system, both operating and capital investment into building more. But we get into trouble over and over again when we support political-based transit projects rather than evidence-based transit projects.
I'm surprised a councillor from the City of Toronto is saying that, because I'll tell you, your transit plans, I think you ran out of napkins in the City of Toronto putting those plans together.
It was Doug Ford.
Let's talk about
it was
who
Doug
did that.
Ford and Doug Ford and his brother who ripped up the evidence-based plans that were about to move forward that were fully funded by the other orders of government, the province. They were ready to go.
They would have been built by now.
They would have been built by now. And what's happened now is that when I hear, with all due respect, when I hear politicians say, let's just build transit, what I don't believe that really listens to is residents' demands, whether they be in Markham or in Toronto, saying, we don't care what kind of vehicle it is, whether it be a subway, LRT, or a train, just get us to work on time.
They do
get us
care.
to school.
They want rapid transit, Josh.
To
Let me
just
assure you of
promise subways to the suburbs isn't what cities like Paris or London or other cities
you know what?
do.
You're going to have to get north of Bloor, and I'm happy to host you a day
I
up in Markham.
I represent north of Bloor.
Well, no, but okay, that's fine. But a little bit further north of Bloor.
But just to
show you the employment centers that exist today.
Do you realize a kilometer of boring a tunnel can cost between $200 and $300 million? What we need to do is invest every dollar thoughtfully and wisely, these tax dollars, into our priorities. If we want the relief line, if we want social housing, if we want to build subways, LRTs, and trains and use the existing corridors to the best of their ability,
let me tell you, in York region, the track record that we have in York region is that when we had an option to deliver rapid transit across Highway 7, across the urban areas in York region, we decided to do a bus rapid transit system. Why? Because you can almost reach the ridership of an LRT at a third of the cost. So when it comes to putting our dollars in the right places, we've put it in the right places.
And I respect
but to determine that we need some other method, Stephen, of getting from the Finch subway up to Yonge and Highway 7, as I said, 2,500 daily bus trips. There's going to be 50,000 people, 24,000 jobs at the corner of Yonge and Highway 7. And we need that rapid transit system to serve the broader GTA.
We need to carve out some time for the
Our employers are just looking for us to be practical, okay? We fully agree. Could have, should have, with revenue tools. And in fact, my predecessor and the person in the job before her were all advocating for that, and it hasn't gotten us anywhere. We haven't had the orders of government willing to do that. So as far as our members are concerned, we've got a critical issue that's impacting the economy. We've got employment megazones. If you look at the Neptis Foundation evidence around where the jobs are located, where people are living, how they're transiting to those jobs, we've got a problem that needs to be solved. Uploading is an opportunity. I've got confidence the mayor and city council can negotiate a deal in the best interest. All the things that you're concerned about, the air rights, well, negotiate for Toronto to get its share of those air rights. Negotiate for Toronto to upload that $23 billion of unfunded transit fund that's required. Negotiate the relief line coming first. I mean, this is a negotiation. I trust you can do it in the best interest of our employers and our workforce.
Jen, this is a negotiation that was announced after a unilateral announcement that the subway is going to be uploaded. So these
it's still a negotiation.
To an extent, but it isn't.
We see this as an opportunity. I don't see any other opportunity.
I appreciate your optimism, and I respect it. But what I've seen in front of us, I'm just going based on the evidence in front of us.
I'm not seeing revenue tools being offered.
That there's been an announcement made by the province that they intend to take Toronto subway. And they're asking us to sort of give them the keys to the door and the code to the alarm and what the value of the assets are.
And the $23 billion that you don't have to maintain the existing system.
They're giving you a lifeline.
That's going to free up so much
they're saying they are going to
They
fund
are-
these projects. They're
Doug
not,
Ford-
they're not asking for the keys. They want you to operate it.
I
They are
respectfully
giving you a
disagree. Doug
lifeline
Ford
to
Our residents
Hang on, we
are
got to have one at a time
valuable
here.
asset
One
from
at a
us.
time. Josh, make your point, please.
Doug Ford wants to take Toronto's most valuable asset. Torontonians, taxpayers in the city, paid for that subway. They own that subway. And I agree, by the way, that the status quo isn't working. And I also agree that those lands along the line should be used more effectively, both to build social housing and other asset, amenities that Torontonians need, vital services. But also it's the right thing to do. What the province wants to do is take that money and spend it elsewhere. And what I would submit is you should have improved transit. Toronto should have improved transit. The region should work together. But Doug Ford doesn't have a plan for that. This is a focus on using Toronto's assets to start spending elsewhere while not focusing on things like the relief line and other priorities that we
I
have.
disagree. You
haven't seen
negotiate
that.
for that. And I would say we've done third-party environics research with the City of Toronto, with other cities. And what we found is that City of Toronto feedback is second least satisfied of 6 different
But we
cities
agree
in the
on that.
region on transit, 74% pro-upload. So this is telling me our residents are just frustrated.
You know why they
without
are?
being
Because they're
able to-
frustrated, and by Doug Ford saying, this is the answer. Like I said, you complain about a headache, somebody says they're going to carve off your leg. If I went out there right now
But
to Young and
Councillor, if not
Eglinton,
this,
to Young and
what's the
Eglinton,
solution?
if I went
What's
out to
the
Young and Eglinton, and I went to the
practical,
average person and
available
said, are you happy with the status quo? Virtually everyone would tell me, and they would tell you, they are sick of waiting 4 or 5 trains every single morning or afternoon to get onto the subway. If I said, well, the answer is to upload the subway, they'll say, yes, whatever, just do something. The reality is, just because you promise something doesn't mean it's always the right answer. That isn't the answer to our solution. What we need to do
What is
moving
the
forward,
answer?
I'd be happy to tell you, the way to move forward is to be realistic and honest about what tools we need to actually fund these transit lines, rather than what Doug
They're not
Ford is doing.
forthcoming. They're
What Doug
not
Ford is
forthcoming.
doing, like his brother before him, he's saying that developers are going to build subway stations.
Josh, where we
Councillor, we've been
agree-
advocating for 15 years for this, and it's not happening. At a certain point, you need to say, you can keep asking for it, but when's the solution?
So
gonna
I
come?
would
It's
suggest
not.
hone your frustration towards demanding that our elected representatives focus on fact-based plans, actually get agreements seen through to fruition, like Transit City, and stop tearing things up every 4 years and then blaming somebody else for not getting something
Can I
done.
put a new issue on the table here, Cherise? Let me go to you on this. When I do travel around this province, whether it's in Ottawa, Windsor, Thunder Bay, where Josh wants to build a subway to, or something else, one of the questions I often hear is, why should we have to pay for Toronto's transit improvements? What's the answer to that?
Well, I actually don't think it's true. I mean, Toronto's been paying for its transit for 70 years, and it's the most under-subsidized transit agency in North America. What I'm actually afraid of is quite the opposite, as Josh was explaining. If our transit that we've paid for and our assets are then cannibalized to then build transit elsewhere, if it's reinvested back into Toronto, and we're guaranteed that it is, and that it actually matches the value of what those assets are, then that would work out. Otherwise, we're subsidizing transit elsewhere.
Stephen,
I
where do
think
you
another
think
way
the
of-
money's coming from now? Where do you think the money's coming from now? When a minister comes to the City of Toronto, whether they're federal or provincial, they're coming, when they write that check, it's come from all the taxpayers across the province of Ontario. Operational, you can talk about maybe you don't get the level of support, but when it comes to construction, when it comes to the capital costs, you got $9 billion in the PTIF funding from the federal government. $9 billion. We got 300 million, which won't even pay for the design of the Yonge subway all the way up to Highway 7. So no, the answer is, yeah, everyone pays those federal tax dollars, provincial tax dollars, and they go to service the needs of the province of Ontario. And I'm sure there's investments in Northern Ontario that happen where others in the province may say, why are those dollars going up there?
Other cities, other jurisdictions that have uploaded their subways, because that's, we can learn from those. Like, look at New York, look at Baltimore. Both those experiences didn't work out so well. They resulted in a lot of starving the center to spread the peanut butter around the region.
Actually,
and in fact,
can I do this now? Because you brought up New York.
Okay.
The guy who runs the New York subway system used to run the Toronto Transit Commission. Okay, Andy Byford. Let's hear what he had to say about all this. Sheldon, if you would, please.
Does it make sense on the face of it to have the streetcars and the subways run by one entity and the buses by another?
Not in my opinion, and not least because there's a financial implication here. That the subway, because of obviously the numbers of customers it carries, the subway largely pays for its own operating costs. The buses and streetcar network do not. So effectively, for the TTC, the subway cross-subsidises the buses and streetcars. So I think were the subway alone to be uploaded to the province, the buses and streetcars would become almost unsustainable for the city.
So it's all or nothing at all?
I'd say do not break the TTC up.
Okay, this is a guy who's now finding himself in the crosshairs of every political dispute between the governor of New York and the mayor of New York, who, despite being in the same party, hate each other. And he's supposed to figure it all out.
So you're talking
Uploading may not be
So
the-
you're talking
Can I comment on
operations
this?
there, though, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about operating,
Operation.
and I would agree. You wouldn't break up the TTC operationally. The Line 1, Yonge Subways, their cash cow that helps pay a lot to and contributes a lot to the rest of the system. That's not what we're talking about here, and I don't think I've seen anything that disputes that. We're talking about advancing the priority transit projects, building them, actually building them. The TTC will continue to operate them, and God bless them, they'll get that ridership and that revenue.
Even on the capital side, though, on the physical infrastructure side, a lot of the subway infrastructure is really closely integrated with streetcar lines, with bus lines, right? Like there are streetcar lines that go right into underground subway stations. So you can see how complicated this is going to be. Right now, the province and the city are trying to put a value on subway stations, on subway tracks. How do you split up what part of a subway station is serving a streetcar and what is the subway? It gets very, very difficult. So even though operations would probably be messier, even what they're talking about now is going to be very difficult to set.
and some of
But
that
I
can
think what
create
we-
a lot more delays if we're looking at building faster. I mean, there's hundreds of easements. Like, who owns the signals? Who owns the liability if somebody? Where does the bus space start and end in the
this is
transit station?
complicated.
It's very complicated. It's not a simple thing.
But it's not.
They like
You know
us to
what?
think it's simple and that this is going to solve the problems. Well, it could create more problems. And I think we need to just start rolling up our sleeves and figuring out how to fund the transit that is evidence-based.
We already know.
And that is going to serve the
we
most
already know
riders.
the projects that are evidence-based. We already know what needs to get done. There needs to be a willingness to recognize ourselves as elected representatives, but also be honest with the electorate, with our voters, with our citizens, that it's not always a subway. That subways should be where subways belong, based on ridership, based on density projections. But also, we need LRTs, we need other surface routes, we need to utilize our trains, our GO, our AR better, and build a system that we could do right now if we chose to. Unfortunately, what I'm concerned about and what many riders are concerned about is that if we get into this long battle over ownership, it once again delays moving forward with the evidence-based transit
Stephen, it's
because
not
we're looking at
complicated.
this.
We just had the Spadina subway come up to Highway 7. We had to integrate our bus rapid transit system with the subway station that's there. We know where the property lines are. We know where the TTC operation ends and where the bus rapid transit begins. So to say that we can't figure this out, my gosh, I think we're a bit more
Let
sophisticated
me give the last
than
30
that.
seconds to Jan on this.
I'm just going to say that there's major jurisdictions in Europe that have figured this out. And we've got the Eglinton Crosstown is an example where the province is funding it, the city has chosen location, TTC will operate it. So I struggle with why we can't do this on a broader scale, because quite frankly, I just don't see any magic of revenue tools coming down shortly. I thought I was getting the last
I
word
did
on
too.
this.
I did too.
Let me just say, all I can say is I represent the business community. We're seriously concerned about the inability of connecting people to their jobs, and it's not just a downtown thing, it's other parts, and it's cross-municipal.
I have to say, I am completely alarmed at the lack of passion among all of you on this issue. It's really it's very disturbing. Thank you, Mr. Director, for the nice wide shot, so I can thank everybody all at once for coming into TVO tonight in Josh Matlow's Ward 12, Toronto St. Paul's riding, which is north of Bloor Street.
And a crowded subway.
And a crowded subway station to boot. Thank you for making the trip down from Markham, and appreciate having everybody here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.